Let me get to my guest. It's Trent Kelly, Congressman Kelly from Mississippi's 1st District. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. How are you? I'm great.
We're just handling breaking news here. So Grinder is out. We don't know where this guy goes. I'm sure he goes back to Mother Russia or wherever it happens to be. But it took a long time to get there, didn't it?
It did, but I mean, this is just about, first of all, she probably should have never been arrested and all that stuff. And, for minor crimes, and we're swapping her, our great negotiator of a president is swapping her for the merchant of death. Yeah. He's against all semi-automatic weapons, yet a guy who sold hundreds of thousands to our enemies, automatic weapons and explosives and surface-to-air missiles. He's going to release this guy so he can sell more to the bad guys while he tries to take away our rights.
I don't think there's anything that's happened in this administration that makes sense. Certainly, one of the things I want to talk to you about is the vaccination situation. Rand Paul had this yesterday, and if we'll just spend a couple of seconds on here, because it lays kind of the groundwork of what this situation is.
Our young men and women in the military deserve better. The Biden administration's vaccination mandate has forced our nation's young patriotic men and women to choose between their faith and their career, between their medical autonomy and their career. At a time when the military is struggling to meet their targets for recruitment, the Biden administration is firing soldiers we invested in and trained. Some will argue that the vaccine mandate in the military is not new. That is correct, but there are several factors unique to the COVID vaccine that make it different than other mandates. First, the CDC acknowledges that the COVID vaccine does not stop transmission. So the argument that the mandate will stop incapacitating spread in the close quarters of the military is not applicable. Second, the COVID vaccine has a risk of causing inflammation, particularly in young men, particularly the young men that comprise over 90% of our military recruits. In addition, several scientific studies, including a very large one in Israel and another one by the CDC, have shown that a heightened risk of myocarditis for children and teenagers after taking a second COVID vaccine dose. Because of this scientific evidence, European countries began restricting the vaccine for certain age groups. Dr. Paul Offit, a former member of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Vaccines, resigned over this policy. He also said that even though he's pro-vaccine, he's been pro-everything vaccine for 40 years, that he wouldn't give the vaccine to his 24-year-old son. Third, the mandate ignores naturally acquired immunity. 80% of our young military recruits have had COVID. By compelling the young people to inject a vaccine into their bodies, they're accepting a risk of myocarditis. In fact, it is inadvisable to take a vaccine if you've recently had COVID. Even the CDC admits this. Our service members have spent their entire lives dedicated to protecting our country and making sacrifices to defend the Constitution. Congress should take action, and we're taking action today by saying we will not vote to get on the NDAA, the Defense Authorization Bill, unless we have a vote on ending this military vaccine mandate.
After that, explain exactly where we are with this one, Congressman Kelly.
Well, I don't know. Boy, our speaker doesn't want this to go away. She's using this COVID to keep people proxy voting and to keep metal detectors and all that stuff. But we won't pass the NDAA through the House without Republican votes. And we will not vote for an NDAA on the Republican side. Our leader, Kevin McCarthy, has said that does not include a repeal of the vaccine mandate. And let me tell you, it didn't stop transmission. You're talking about a healthy population, which you're inoculating for something that, listen, initially it was a good idea. But, leaders, when they make a decision based on the best facts at the time, they figure out that that's not the science anymore. They change. And our president and our Secretary of Defense has refused to change their stance. It's all about I'm the boss and I'm right, and not about doing what's best for our service members. And it's killed us in recruiting. We've lost great warriors due to this vaccine mandate. So we will repeal it in the NDAA, or the NDAA will not pass the House.
By the way, are you on a speakerphone?
I am.
If you could get off of that, I'd appreciate it. It just gets too hollow.
Okay.
Oh, that's 100% better. I do want to ask you, what is the latest that you've heard from the president? Because at one point he kind of indicated, but then again, you never know if he remembers what he said 15 minutes earlier. He kind of indicated that he would revisit that, and then on Monday of this week, John Kirby comes in and says this: Secretary Austin's been very clear that he opposes the repeal of that vaccine mandate, and the president actually concurs with the secretary that we need to continue to believe that all Americans, including those in the armed forces, should be vaccinated and boosted with COVID-19. So is that the latest stance you've heard from the White House?
No, I think the Secretary of Defense is pushing very hard to keep it in. I think the president has made a commitment. I think he will stick by that. I think he's getting a lot of pressure from the Speaker of the House and from the Secretary of Defense and from outside sources to back off of that. But the bottom line is they cannot pass the National Defense Authorization Act through the House without Republican votes, and Republicans will not vote if it does not repeal it.
What does that do to is that to fund the military infrastructure in our country, or what is that act comprised of? What does it do?
Well, it funds the entire defense. It's the authorization of all the things that they appropriate money to. It's also all the policy that runs DOD, and that is all four of our services. That is everything, Paul. So listen, we passed this thing 62 consecutive years. And if the Democrats with the House and the Senate and the presidency don't pass this thing, it is a travesty, and it is all on them. It is their job to get 218 votes, and that means repealing the COVID mandate. If they don't want to do that, they'll have a hard time getting 218 votes.
Would this put any military installations, as far as their funding, in jeopardy, or maybe the pay to the soldiers?
What it does is leave them on a continuing resolution and leaves the old policies in place. And so it doesn't furlough any. That's the funding mechanism that comes next. But what it does is they don't get pay raises. They can't do new contracts for technology and equipment. They can't have maintenance contracts. And so what that does is put us at a risk at a readiness level. Can't buy new ammunition, all those things that they need to do.
You're a military guy. What is it anything in here to push along with excluding the vaccinations to get those people who've been kicked out reinstated?
Yeah, I think some of it, and we're still getting the language. They're still negotiating that, Paul. I don't think they get reinstated. I think they can reapply, and there will be no negative dishonorable or general discharges allowed on those folks who were gone because of the COVID mandate. And this is a really tough situation, Paul, because initially the science did kind of support that a vaccine was going to work and all that, and soldiers have to follow orders. When you get chaos and anarchy when soldiers don't follow orders. But now we've gotten to the fact where the science shows that is not true, and now our leadership needs to, that would be the Secretary of Defense and the President needs to say no vaccine mandate.
Ben, could you say the same thing about Ukraine? Because it looks like when January gets here in the House, the Republicans get the gavel, the checks are not going to float to the Ukraine. I don't know if you heard what I just played a little bit earlier on the Ukraine from Tucker Carlson. But do you think the House is going to cut those checks from the Republican part like the Democrats have been doing?
I don't think it's the same thing, and there's going to be some accountability. We're going to make sure that things are flowing where they're supposed to flow, that they're going into the hands of people where they are. And I feel the same way about, listen, we need to support Ukraine with weapons and systems to fight the Russians. Putin is a bad guy. But that being said, I feel the same way about ag. We need to send bags of rice in ag, not cash for some corrupt dictator to spend. And the same way with these weapons, we need to send weapon systems and make sure they get in the right hands, but we don't need to give them money that can be misappropriated or misspent on things that it's not supposed to be. So there has to be a heavy accounting. So I think you will still see some money go, but I think there will be a heavier level of accountability when the Republicans take charge.
I was listening to the entire interview, and some of the things that Tucker was talking about, some of the money and literally millions of dollars going to support nearby countries that have been affected in one way or the other, but there's no accounting on that at all. And it's our money, Joe and Josie in Middle America and elsewhere, who are paying for this through our taxes. But I want to ask you a little bit more. Hang on, back with Congressman Trent Kelly when we return. Okay, let's get back live in the Trust Rank Studios to Trent Kelly, Congressman, 1st District. I'm just curious, what does it feel like around there knowing that this is already the 8th day of December and January is going to be a little bit different when this January rolls around? What's the preparation? What's the committee assignment preliminaries look like? Give me an overview of the field there.
Yeah, it's well, everybody's focused on the speaker's race for January 3rd, and we need to get Kevin McCarthy across the line. I'm a huge supporter. There's nobody who can garner over 10 votes who's running against him, and we need to unify because the bottom line, until we have a speaker, they can't do committee assignments. They can't populate those committees. They can't do the steering until that speaker is chosen. So any day we go past January 3rd is just cutting into the time we have to govern as a Republican majority in the House. I should say on the Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and also the Agriculture Committee, all which are so important to Mississippi and my district. And so that's what it looks like. But unless we get the speaker elected, and listen, I'm fine that they have things and to negotiate and listen, had some good rules packages and things come out with those negotiations. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line, if you can't, when you nominate someone in a primary, you don't vote for the Democrat then, and that's what they're doing by challenging McCarthy. He was selected by our conference with over 90% of the vote, and so no one can get over 20 votes, I would say, if they can even get that. So we need to make McCarthy. There's no viable alternative here.
I was going to say there's not really a viable challenger or a challenger that's got any behind him, any motivation or momentum behind him.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are my friends, but I think they're just dead wrong on this. They're negotiating with themselves, and it's just not good for America. And the bottom line is we need to get the speaker elected, and if they've got a viable alternative, put them on the table, but they don't. And then let's get started with business and get our committee assignments, and let's start oversight and all the things that are important to the American people.
Have you met or had a powwow with the new congressman from Mr. Ezell?
Mike Ezell? Yes, I have. He's a nice guy. We're working on trying to get him committee assignments, pushing real hard to look at either armed services, ag, and homeland security. We will push for those things through the steering process. It's a very difficult and convoluted process. We're working hard to get Michael Guest where he wants to be, and I'm just wanting to stay where I am. I'm very happy with the committee assignments that I have.
But you have showed him where the bathrooms are.
I have. He's going to be fine. He's going to listen. I think he's going to be a great person for Mississippi. I think he's going to be part of the Mississippi team and the Republican Mississippi team, and I think he will be an addition. We're going to miss Stephen, who is a great friend of mine. It's just, this is business. You work with who you have up here, and Mike's going to be a great addition.
With the revelation that Herschel Walker did not win, they've got 51 to 49. Which renders Kamala even more useless than she was before. But that said, it's even more important that the House has been won by the Republicans.
It is, but we've also got to focus on this voting stuff. And I'm going to tell you, Paul, they're voting for 30 days and we're voting for one. And so listen, that's the rules. I don't like the rules. I voted against everything that does all the early voting and all the things they've done. But the bottom line is that's the rule in your state. You better play by the rules of the game or we're going to continue to lose races we shouldn't lose.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, as far as McCarthy is concerned, I'm not as concerned with him. But I am concerned with Mitch McConnell. I'm concerned with Ronna McDaniel and she's got some competition now. I think it's a little too late, but there's a very viable opponent who announced yesterday. And it's just if we keep doing the same things, and I don't think that the Georgia election was more testimony to that we've got to be thinking out of the box, and the Republican Party has got to bring itself up to date with the base.
I agree wholeheartely. And I don't deal very much with either the Senate or with the RNC. I deal mostly in the House. And so I'll let them deal with their leadership elections. All I'm focused on is getting McCarthy across the line because that's good for Mississippi. It's good for America. He's a proven conservative, and we would not have the majority either the last time we have it or this time without Kevin McCarthy.
Anything else you want to mention before we let you go, sir?
No, man, I just thank you, and everybody have a Merry Christmas, and hopefully we'll get Nancy to do her job between now and Christmas, and I'll get home before Christmas Day. But if not, I hope everybody back home has a Merry Christmas, Paul, and you too.
You got it. Thank you, man. Appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir. All right.
Merry Christmas to you, Congressman Trent Kelly from District 1.